After years of military service, I finally came home for Christmas. Days before my flight, my dad texted, "Don't come home. You're not welcome here anymore." I simply replied, "Understood." 5 days later, I woke up to 10 missed calls. One of them was from my parents' lawyer. "Hey Reddit, my name is Rachel Bennett. I'm 32 years old, and for 8 years, I wore the same military uniform with pride. I missed birthdays, Thanksgivings, anniversaries, 2 Christmases. My younger cousins grew up through pictures. My parents grew older through video calls. Every time I deployed, Dad always ended our conversations the same way. Come home safe." Mom would smile through tears. "The tree won't feel complete until you're sitting under it again." Those words carried me through some of the hardest nights of my life. Whenever things became overwhelming, I reminded myself that eventually, I'd go home. Christmas was supposed to be that moment. Instead, 5 days before my flight, my father sent a text message that changed everything. "Don't come home this Christmas. You're not welcome here anymore." I stared at my phone for almost 10 minutes. Then I replied with one word, "Understood." 5 days later, I woke up to 10 missed calls. 9 were from my family. The 10th was from their lawyer. Looking back now, I should have realized things were changing long before that message arrived. I grew up in a quiet town outside Denver. Dad owned a small hardware store. Mom worked at the local library. We weren't wealthy, but we were close. At least, I thought we were. My younger brother, Ethan, was 3 years younger than me. He hated responsibility, loved shortcuts, and somehow, Mom always found a reason to excuse him. "He'll mature. He's just figuring life out." Dad usually agreed. Meanwhile, I became the dependable child. Honor roll, athletics, ROTC. Eventually, I enlisted in the military at 24. Mom cried. Dad hugged me tighter than he ever had before. I've never been prouder. Those words meant everything to me. Military life wasn't easy. There were birthdays spent overseas, phone calls that lasted only minutes, Christmas dinners in crowded mess halls. But every December, a package from home arrived. Mom baked cookies. Dad included handwritten letters. Ethan usually added something ridiculous. A toy dinosaur, funny socks, a terrible joke. Those little traditions reminded me that no matter where I was, home still existed. Then, 3 years before that Christmas, everything started changing. Dad retired earlier than expected. The hardware store was sold. Ethan announced he wanted to start his own construction company. Dad invested nearly all the money from selling the business. "We're keeping it in the family." I congratulated him, but quietly suggested, "Please have everything in writing." Dad laughed. "You've become suspicious of everyone." "No, I've just learned paperwork matters." He dismissed it. "We trust family." That sentence always made me nervous. Months passed. Whenever I called, Ethan answered less often. Dad sounded distracted. Mom rushed through conversations. Whenever I asked if everything was okay, they insisted it was. "Just busy." I believed them. Until one afternoon, I called to tell them I'd finally been approved for Christmas leave. Mom sounded strangely quiet. "Oh, that's wonderful." But she didn't sound excited. I noticed immediately. "Is something wrong?" "No, just tired." Dad barely came to the phone. He quickly said, "We'll talk later," then hung up. Something didn't feel right. A week later, I bought my plane ticket anyway, wrapped everyone's presents. Dad loved old woodworking books. Mom collected handmade ornaments. Ethan wanted expensive power tools. I bought them all. Then, 5 days before my flight, my phone vibrated. Dad's name appeared on the screen. I smiled, thinking he was calling to ask about my arrival. Instead, it was a text. "Don't come home this Christmas." My stomach tightened. Then another message appeared. "You're not welcome here anymore." I read it again and again. Surely, it had to be a mistake. I called immediately. No answer. I called Mom, straight to voicemail. I called Ethan. He declined the call. I sent one message. "Did something happen?" No reply. An hour later, another text appeared. "Please respect our decision." No explanation. Nothing. For the first time in years, I cried, not because I couldn't spend Christmas at home, because I had no idea what I'd done. My commanding officer noticed immediately. "You okay, Bennett?" I handed him my phone. He quietly read the messages, then looked at me. "Are you sure this came from your father?" "I don't know anymore." He nodded thoughtfully. "Take the holiday anyway. You've earned it. But don't chase people who are telling you to stay away." Those words stayed with me. That evening, I canceled my flight. Instead, I volunteered to spend Christmas with several service members who couldn't travel home. We shared dinner, opened small gifts, laughed at old stories. Everyone smiled, but every few minutes, I found myself looking at my silent phone, wondering what had happened, wondering why my family suddenly wanted nothing to do with me. Christmas came, then went. Not a single message arrived. No Merry Christmas, no explanation, nothing. I accepted it, painfully, but completely. 5 days later, my phone exploded with notifications. Missed call, missed call, missed call. 9 from my parents, 3 from Ethan, several voicemails, then one number I didn't recognize. The voicemail transcript appeared on my screen. Ms. Bennett, this is David Morrison, attorney for your parents. Please contact me immediately regarding an urgent family matter. Time is extremely important. My heart started racing. At that exact moment, another call came in. It was Dad. For several seconds, I simply stared at the screen. The same man who had texted, "You're not welcome here anymore," was now calling again, over and over. I finally answered. Before I could say a single word, Dad's voice cracked through tears. "Rachel, oh thank God. Sometimes, the hardest words to forgive aren't spoken in anger. They're the ones sent in silence, with no explanation at all." As I listened to my father's trembling voice, after days of rejection, I realized the message telling me I wasn't welcome had never been the whole story. I gripped my phone so tightly my hand hurt. Dad was crying, not the quiet sniffles I'd heard at funerals. He was sobbing. "Rachel, I'm so sorry." I closed my eyes. "You told me I wasn't welcome." "I know." I didn't understand. His breathing shook. "Please, just let me explain." I sat down on the edge of my bunk. "I'm listening." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, Dad said, "Your brother sent those messages." I frowned. "What?" "He borrowed my phone while I was asleep. He told us later that he'd handled Christmas." My heart sank. "You never texted me." "No. I didn't even know you'd canceled your flight until Christmas Eve." I felt a knot in my stomach. "Then why didn't anyone call me?" Dad let out a long, painful sigh. "Because Ethan blocked your number on both our phones. He also deleted your messages." I couldn't speak. The room suddenly felt very small. Dad continued, "We thought you were ignoring us. We kept wondering why you never answered." I whispered, "Oh, my God." He broke down again. "When we finally realized what he'd done, so you were already gone." I leaned against the wall, trying to make sense of everything. "What happened?" Dad's voice hardened. "We confronted him. He admitted everything. He said he didn't want you coming home because..." Dad stopped. I quietly asked, "Because what?" "He thought we'd spend Christmas talking about your military service instead of his business." Silence. Then Dad added, "He said he was tired of living in your shadow." I stared at the floor. For years, I'd believed Ethan didn't care what anyone thought. I had been wrong. A week later, I flew home, not for Christmas, for answers. Dad met me at the airport. The moment he saw me, he wrapped me in the biggest hug of my life. "I'm so sorry." "So am I." Mom was waiting in the car. The second I opened the door, she burst into tears. "I thought you hated us." I shook my head. "I thought you hated me." Neither of us could stop crying. Back at the house, everything looked exactly the same. Except, it didn't feel the same. The Christmas tree was still standing. Most of my presents remained unopened beneath it. Mom pointed toward them. I couldn't bear to move them. Later that afternoon, Ethan walked through the front door. He froze the moment he saw me. "I didn't think you'd come." I almost didn't. He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." I looked at him. "No. Tell me why." He sat down, then, for the first time in his life, he answered honestly. "After Dad sold the hardware store, and my business wasn't doing well, I kept comparing myself to you. Everywhere I went, people asked about my sister in the military. They talked about your promotions, your medals, how proud Mom and Dad were." He laughed bitterly. "And every time, I felt smaller." I quietly replied, "So you decided to erase me?" He nodded. "I thought, if you skipped one Christmas, then everyone would finally focus on me." Dad stood up. "And instead, you nearly destroyed this family." Ethan lowered his head. "I know." A few moments later, the front doorbell rang. Dad opened it. Standing outside was David Morrison, the family attorney. He stepped inside carrying a folder. "I think everyone should hear this together." We all sat down. He placed several documents on the coffee table, then calmly explained, "A week before Christmas, your parents updated their estate plan." Dad nodded. "We wanted both of our children treated equally." The attorney continued, "After discovering what happened, your parents immediately asked me to revise those documents." I looked at Dad. "I don't want anyone punished because of me." Dad shook his head. "This isn't punishment. It's accountability." He looked directly at Ethan. "You intentionally separated this family. You lied. You manipulated us. You abused our trust." The attorney explained that the revised documents placed strict conditions on how family assets would be managed in the future, requiring transparency and independent oversight so that no one person could manipulate decisions again. Dad looked at me. This isn't about choosing one child over another. It's about making sure honesty matters. For the first time, Ethan didn't argue. He simply nodded. I understand. Over the following months, things slowly began to heal. Ethan entered counseling. He admitted his jealousy had been growing for years. Instead of pretending nothing had happened, we finally talked about it. Really talked. Not as children competing for approval, but as adults trying to rebuild trust. It wasn't quick. It wasn't easy. But it was honest. Epilogue. The next Christmas, I came home again. This time, Dad met me at the airport himself. He refused to let anyone else drive. Mom hugged me before I even reached the front door. Inside, the first gift waiting beneath the tree wasn't wrapped. It was my old stocking, exactly where it had hung every Christmas since I was 10 years old. Dad smiled. It never should have come down. Ethan walked over. I know I can't undo what I did, but I'll spend the rest of my life earning back your trust. I hugged him, not because everything had been forgotten, because forgiveness begins when someone accepts responsibility without making excuses. That Christmas wasn't perfect, but it was real. And after everything we'd been through, that was more than enough. My thoughts, looking back, the text message that broke my heart wasn't sent by the person I believed, but the pain it caused was real. One unanswered conversation nearly destroyed an entire family. Trust is precious. It should never be built on assumptions. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do isn't speaking louder. It's picking up the phone, asking one more question, and refusing to let silence become the final answer. And no matter how many miles separate a family, honesty will always find its way home first.